Hello there, 8th graders. Thank you for coming. This is Teacher Krishna, and welcome to our science class for week number 18. Just like every week, we have to follow some general directions at first. Log into Agilix, enter the Google Classroom, download the Word document, save it inside your science folder, just like it is specified right below. Alright, and it's always important to start with our end in mind. And today we're going to be reviewing topic 3.01. And the end in mind is the following. Students will be able to understand the sources of water human usage, as well as techniques for possible water reuse and purification. Alright, so make sure to keep track of it in your Word document. Alright, so before we start, we have to do a small review, just like I was mentioning. So please go back to the video for topic 3.01 and watch it to review some important concepts. It is the third post in Google Classroom. So today we are reviewing this topic because I noticed that almost half of the class, or a little bit more than half of the class, struggle a little bit with the evaluation from this topic specifically. So what is going to happen is that we're going to review the topic. Some students are going to redo the evaluation we did at first. And some other students that got a higher grade are going to be expanding the topic with a new project. Alright? So make sure to go right there and review some important concepts. In this presentation, I'm going to add some extra information to what is stated right there. Alright, so welcome back. And now we're going to talk about hydroelectric power. This is one of the best electric resources that humans have created because it is very clean and it does not require a lot of pollution such as other electrical sources that we have. Okay, and we have to talk about potential energy. It is the energy that water has when it does not move. So, potential energy can be applied to portions of water, just like the lake that you can see right there, or they can be applied specifically to other bodies, such as let's imagine a ball at the top of a hill. So, when the ball is not moving at the top of the hill, it has potential energy. Okay? But now we have kinetic energy, and it is the energy that water has when it moves. So if the water is just staying still, it has potential energy, but when it starts to move, just like it is shown right there in the dam, it starts generating kinetic energy. So how do we use both of these concepts in order to create hydroelectric power? Well, hydroelectric power is the following. People build up dams, just like the one we can see in the picture. They use the potential energy generated to create kinetic energy when moving turbines, thus create electricity. So, when a portion of water, just like a lake, which is so gigantic, is staying still, it generates a lot of potential energy. Once it starts moving, it is going to create a lot of kinetic energy when it starts interacting with the turbines that are in the dam. So all of that movement that is generated in the dam is going to cause the turbines to generate electricity that can later be used for human use. Alright, now we have something else right here in this picture. And what is a watershed? So what you see in the picture is a watershed. You can notice that it's a piece of land that is somehow inclined in a certain direction, so the tributaries are going to redirect the water that they are getting from the rain to a river, and of course to a bigger water portion, just like a lake. So, in other words, it is a location where all the rain ends up forming in a bigger portion of water, such as rivers, lakes, etc. These can also be known as drainage bases. And water resources are linked to the ecosystem's resources. So, remember that water is an essential part for life and for ecosystems as well, because all living beings need water in order to survive. When we talk about plants, they need water in order to grow up, and animals also need some water to consume in order for they to have all of their body functions correctly. What happens is that if in an ecosystem there is not water, then it is way too difficult for a lot of nature, just like plants and animals, to live in there. We can see the example of deserts, for example. In deserts, there are not many water resources around. So all of the species that you can find by there are very limited. And wetlands are important for many things. We can include transportation, food, population regulation, and water supply. It's known already that humans use a lot of these wetlands for and water resources for their own usage. And I can mention, for example, some people need to attend the rivers in some parts in Guatemala in order to clean their clothes. There are some other parts in which we use rivers in order to generate the source of power, just like the one we analyzed before. But we we don't need we are not the only species that needs these resources, because plants and animals need them as well. But what happens is that human activity can actually modify them. So let's analyze the type of wetlands that we can see around. Here you have four examples, but there are more around. And we can see a forest, we can see a swamp, a pond, and a riverside. What happens is that all of them share the same characteristic, which is that the water that comes from rain are going to end up in tributaries, rivers, or in other bigger portions of water. And of course, that is going to help all of the living things that are around the water portions to live, of course. Now we have, how can people protect of damaged watersheds? Well, just like I mentioned before, human activity can affect watersheds, definitely. The thing is that if we overuse the resources from there, we are going to be stealing the resources that not only plants but animals need in order to survive. So we really have to be very careful with the water that we use, because the water that we're getting at our houses might come directly from a river or a lake. So it's very important to take it into account. So, we're going to talk about damage at first, damage that humans can cause to the watersheds, and then how we can prevent it. So, a leaking hose wastes a lot of water. A leaking hose is basically an artifact that you use to water the plants or to wash your car. But if it has several drops without stopping, even you had already closed if you have already closed it, what is going to happen is that probably one drop of water is not going to be that dangerous. But what happens is that if it just continues over and over for a very extended period of time, then you are just going to be wasting water. So how can we prevent it? So you have to make sure there is not any leaking in your house. So you can check all of your faucets around, all of your hose, and everything that you have at your house. So you are not simply wasting water. And in case you have one, probably you can call a plumber so they can help you out to close it. That is like a very personal example of what can happen at home. But we have some other examples here. So leaking gasoline can contaminate underground water supplies. So let's suppose that one of the gas stations that we have right here have a leaking part as well. So one more time, just some few drops of gasoline are not really going to affect the environment. But if it continues over and over, what is going to happen is that gasoline is going to contaminate the ground, and after a while, it is going to contaminate underground water supplies. It's possible that the water that you're getting can come directly from underwater supplies. So imagine if that water is specifically contaminated and you receive it at home, then it can be very dangerous for your family. So big industries need to follow strict protocols in order not to have one of these things. And using too much water for irrigation can cause water bodies to dry. So, for example, there is a farmer that has a big portions of land. So he asks for permission to the city hall in order to use the water from the lake to water of plantations. But what happens is that if he uses way too much water from the lake, it's possible that it will dry. So it's always very important that we are careful with the way we use water. Alright, so now let's go with our evaluation. Students have to read topic 3.01. So you should already have a summary for this topic. So what I'd like you to do is just to add some extra information that you did not have, alright? And complete and submit the worksheet for topic 3.01. Alright, so this is going to be for the students that have a low grade in this assignment specifically. They have to complete the worksheet they find at the end of the topic. And of course, upload the worksheet to Google Classroom. But for honor students, we'll develop a different evaluation. They will be conducted by the teacher for further instruction. So, I'm going to give some questions about a report that honor students have to do. And they have to submit it. But what happens is that I guess only one person got 10 out of 10 in this evaluation. There are some other students that have 9s or 10 or 8s. So honor students will have the possibility of completing both if they want to. So what is going to happen is that if an honor student decides to complete this worksheet, but of course optimize it and do it way better, then that honor student is going to have the possibilities of getting the 10 points, 10 out of 10. Alright, but besides that, here are the questions for what honor students have to do. So, create a report related to your context in Guatemala, answering the following questions and proposing possible solutions that you could implement. So, what questions do you need to answer in your report? What is an example of a watershed? What factors affect watersheds? Use specific locations and examples. Ask your parents. How has the effects of the previous factors determined the subsistence of certain species? Is it possible to regenerate the original ecosystem in the wetlands, partially or totally? Argument your response. Then you have, what is your proposal to save water from home? Try to come up with a new artifact that can be beneficial. Remember, all of these questions must be related to Guatemala, to the context you are living around. So, one of the ways in which you can include information right here can be that you go on internet and investigate about it. But I would like you to ask your parents about watersheds and water potions around. I can give you an example. That what happens is that when my mother was very young, when she was a kid, she used to go to a very precious river close to her house. But what happened is that after a while, they stopped visiting the river because it was not as big as before, and it started turning into a brownish color. When before it was like pretty much transparent and it was like pure water. But unfortunately, what happened was that humans started contaminating that river, and right now, it's not as the river that she used to know when she was a kid. What happened as well was that I think it was a hotel that was throwing wastes to the river, and of course some general contamination from other sources around. So this is a clear example of what happened to one of the water portions and watersheds, and of course how can human activity can influence the process of contamination. That river was located in San Mateo. Probably some of you know it. It was a couple of kilometers away from the central section of San Mateo. And your report must be at least 2 pages long. Remember to add images and, of course, clear information. Okay, what is the rubric that I will use to evaluate this? I will evaluate your order, complete content, general appearance, grammar, and images. Remember, this last part was for honor students. And the students that got a lower grade, they need to complete the worksheet found at the end of the topic. And that is it for today's lesson, guys. I will be meeting you next week. Goodbye.